Welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John, and you're watching my countdown series, 7 on Sunday. Today's topic is much more serious than what we typically dive into and cover on 7 on Sunday, but I do feel it's a very, very important topic to cover. 7 eye-opening songs about suicide. Whether it be a story that somebody picked up and wrote about, or something somebody experienced in their own life. These songs might not directly always say suicide, but that is at the end of it. That's at the bottom of the barrel. What I take and scrape away from these tracks, there is meaning and there is help also. If you feel like you are struggling and things are too grim and too awful and evil and you cannot take it anymore, please call, text this number. It's right here on screen. Get help. There is somebody, whether it be them or somebody in your life, a friend, a family member, anybody. Reach out. And there is help, somebody to listen. This episode is dedicated to the memory of Chester Bennington, the lead singer of Linkin Park, who just over a year ago at this point took his own life. July 20th, 2017. We still remember you, Chester. We always will. And the goal is to go out there and make Chester proud. Not just Chester, who lost his life. Mental illness was a long, lifetime battle for him, but for anybody out there who maybe you respected or loved or was somebody that you knew that took their own life. This episode goes out to them. Thank you for tuning in, and let's just go ahead and start. Our first song today is Jeremy by Pearl Jam. This was released on their debut album 10, and it saw Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of Pearl Jam, of course, writing about somebody that he saw, Jeremy, of course. He saw this in a newspaper article and got the inspiration to write the song, and it also reminded him of a childhood friend. Maybe not a friend, maybe that's not the best description, but somebody that he knew, somebody from the playground, somebody who was bullied but also bullied other people and didn't get along well. Jeremy is an interesting song because it talks about what led up to the events of suicide and of this kid walking into class, pulling the trigger of the gun and taking his own life. What led up to that? Now, at that time in the early 90s, right around when I was born, I don't think a ton of people were talking about mental health issues, and a song like this from a prominent new band was very promising that people would really start talking. Now, on this track, Jeremy, he kind of talks about how Jeremy spoke in class today. That's the refrain that I think a lot of people hear. But what a lot of people don't know is that it also talks of the reasoning, the bullying, and everything else, the outcasts that really just led up to the fact that this child took his own life in front of his English classmates. This is something that was definitely devastating, of course, but still leaves an impact because of the story behind it.
And now the red ones take things up, and the blue ones help me fall. And I think I've blown my brains against the ceiling. And as the fragments of my skull begin to fall on your tongue like pixie dust.
There's several different theories on what exactly this song, Headfirst for Halos, is about. It was found on their debut album, I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love by My Chemical Romance. And this band was born in the wake of the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City. This happened in 2001, and obviously the album released in 2002, this song was on there, and it was a very challenging song for MCR to finish. It has this bright instrumental with these loud, vibrant guitars that really hit and attack in that regard, but if you pay attention to really what's behind there, it's Gerard Way writing a song that I feel is probably tied to 9/11. There's a lot of allusions here, and obviously it does refer to a gunshot to the head, pixie dust coming out, sprinkling down, and uppers and downers with the whole red pill, blue pill thing. Now, how I feel this is tied into 9/11 is something that a Genius user pointed out a couple of years ago that I noticed, and I really felt was probably a pretty good observation. It wasn't an annotation, it was just a comment that someone left on the page. And it talked about how they felt like all of these things were correlations to suicide and basically just feeling trapped. Maybe they were already depressed and then 9/11 happened and they're in those towers. There's infamous photos of a couple like holding hands before they leap because they know if they stay they're gonna die, so why not take charge of their own death and commit suicide? It's a sad song, but it's also one that uses sarcasm and a kind of misleading instrumental to make you think about the words that are being spoken.
I lay dying and I'm pouring crimson regret and betrayal. I'm dying, praying, bleeding.
The next song I chose for this list is Tourniquet by Evanescence. This song really refers to Christianity and taking your own life. Now, obviously, there's a stigma around that in the Christian community because suicide is looked at as an ultimate sin, an act of betrayal. But this song presents a different angle, and I like that because they were coming from the fact that they were kind of a religious band, not just Amy Lee, the lead singer, but previous members. In fact, I believe their old drummer wrote this track. And what's interesting about Tourniquet is how they kind of talk as she cries out here, and it seems to be coming from the point of view who's someone who just committed suicide. And now here they are in that kind of fall, maybe the in-between. And in that in-between, the free fall, she's saying, "My God, my tourniquet," and she's saying, "My suicide" at the end of the song. It's basically asking for forgiveness, seemingly, and saying, if everything else and every other sin can be absolved and be asked forgiveness for, then why not this? And like I said, there's such a stigma because everybody says, oh, you killed yourself, that's something that you just can't get forgiveness for. And I beg to disagree, especially people with mental illnesses, people who aren't in their right state of mind. More often than not, I don't think that people who are committing suicide, unless it's an act of cowardice, is probably in their right state of mind. And depression, anxiety, other pressures and bullies of life can get you to the point where you aren't thinking straight and you feel like this is the only option. And I think it's very interesting and eye-opening, like I said in the title of this video, to see how Evanescence fleshed this out.
You don't wanna die tonight. Take one more breath to clear your mind. Every moment's relevant, bittersweet and delicate.
The next choice here is something that I find to be very personal because it came out during a tough time in my life. I moved away to the coast for about a year, and I lived there pretty much by myself in the sense that yes, I did live alone, but I also didn't really meet friends in the area. I didn't know people, and I felt very trapped. So this is a very personal song to me. I never got to the point where I wanted to harm myself, but I got to the point where I would literally just get emotional because I did not know what to do. I felt empty, I felt lost, and this is a song that kind of helped to guide me back and gave me hope, knowing that other people especially are still feeling very similar feelings. And 24 Floors by the MAINE came on their album American Candy, and it comes out after a very bright song on the record, but it moves into this one, and it's kind of like the uppers and the downers situation, I feel like. You party, you have fun, you have friends, but then it comes down to it, you're all alone, and here you are on the 24th floor of this hotel balcony, just thinking of jumping into oncoming traffic that's flowing below you. This song is dark, but it's also hopeful, and it's kind of talking about this man that has the voice in his head saying, you don't want to do this, whether that be the voice of a family member or a friend. This isn't how you want to die tonight. Just take a breath, close your eyes, it'll be okay. And I love the illusions and the imagery that's used here, and just the descriptiveness of the hotel room around him. And he says the line, "The TV talks at me apocalyptically." It's something where I feel like maybe if you're in that situation and state of mind, everything gets to you and everything makes you feel hopeless and lost. But I think the song's message overall is to maintain that hope and find that voice in your head or that person in your life that's going to keep you secure.
Until the night he put that bottle to his head and pulled the trigger and finally drank away her memory.
Whiskey Lullaby by Brad Paisley and KRAUSS is one of the first times that I ever remember getting emotional to a song. This came out in 2003 from Brad Paisley's album Mud on the Tires, And it's something that I listened to at just the age of 11, and I could feel the impact. I knew that something was sad about this song, and I had to kind of pay attention to the lyrics and also kind of ask my dad about it and what the song was truly trying to tell us, because at that time I was really only allowed to listen to Christian and country music, but I really still love this song, even coming back to it all these years later, because of the impact and the fact that it's kind of, I think for a lot of people, probably an eye-opening situation where you look at a song like this, especially in popular country music, and it actually has depth to it. It talks about the fact that somebody's feeling guilt over a situation, and then at the end of the day, two people end up killing themselves by drinking themselves to death. It's at least implied that there's guns in the room and everything else, but then the line, but then she put that bottle to her head and pulled the trigger. He put that bottle to his head and pulled the trigger. Finally drank away her memory. It's something where I think a lot of people out there, if you've done something that you do hold that guilt over yourself for, realize that there is redemption. You can redeem yourself by living your life and proving other people wrong, not just wallowing in the sadness and just going out on the note of, well, he drank himself to death, she drank herself to death. It's something that, even at an early age, made me emotional, but also very aware of the fact that these things can happen in life and that there are better ways to handle it.
Forgetting all the hurt inside you've learned to hide so well. Pretending someone else can come and save me from myself. I can't be who you are.
I of course had several songs that I considered from Linkin Park for this very list, but I decided to go with Leave Out All the Rest because I feel like it's one of Chester Bennington's most haunting memories that he left behind. It was almost like a suicide or death note years in advance, almost always knowing that he never felt like he could beat the demons in his life that constantly flared up and came for him and took him to a darker place. When my time comes, forget the wrong that I've done. Help me leave behind some reason to be missed. It's like Chester couldn't even see the fact that he touched so many lives, and even his family around him, his wife Talinda loving him so much, his family, his children, his millions upon millions of adoring fans. If somebody like Chester could feel unwanted and unnecessary, I hate to know the struggle of those who just might feel alone and maybe are alone out there in life and don't have somebody to turn to. If Chester can feel that way, then how easy is it for other people to feel like that? And I feel awful for people who do feel that hopeless. But this song here was truly a touching message, and also one that's very hard to listen to at this point because Linkin Park obviously left a huge mark on the world. So did Chester. And at this point, going back and listening to their music is extremely challenging. I don't do it extremely often. And listening to this song before making this video was a challenge for sure. Leave Out All the Rest is an amazing song, one that is full of kind of hope in the instrumental, but also a lack of hope in the lyrics, a lack of confidence. But still, it seems like maybe there was a glimmer of hope and that Chester did truly enjoy life for a while. We'll never truly know, but we can at least hope.
God, make it stop, let this end. 18 years pushed to the ledge. It's come to this, a weightless step on the way down, singing world.
The very last song that I have for this list today is Make It Stop, September's Children by Rise Against. A rock and post-hardcore band with several other elements to their music, they also have protest in their DNA. And this song, September's Children, definitely protests exactly that. It's for the death and the stoppage of homophobia, and it's also in remembrance of those September's children that in September of 2010 lost their lives by killing themselves because they were bullied for exactly what they were. Just because they were gay, they were put into these situations where they were bullied relentlessly. And to this day, even though things might have gotten some better, things have also gotten somewhat worse. And it seems like there's always contradicting messages of both hate and love out there. And love trumps hate seems to be the message that is prevailing, but we can only hope that nobody, at least in an ideal future, is going to have to feel bad because of who they are at their core. And listen to these 5 children, these teenagers that ended up taking their own life because of the pressures of these things. The members that Rise Against called out here. And that's Asher, Billy, Tyler, Seth, and Raymond. We remember you, and we remember you in the battle against hate, too. No one should have to feel that way because of their sexual orientation, and this protest song is definitely something that you might just hear in passing and you're not sure what it's about, you're not sure what it's protesting. It's protesting homophobia, it's protesting anybody being persecuted for just existing. And to the people who unfortunately inspired this song, just know that your death, I hope, was not in vain. At the very least, if we can take anything away, we have to end this. We have to make it stop. Thank you for watching this episode of 7 on Sunday. I know it was a lot more serious than usual, but I do feel like it was an important topic to cover, especially with a figure who I respected as much as Chester passing away just over a year ago. It's something that I wanted to do in remembrance of him, and I think it's important for other people to really just think about these things and think about the deeper meanings and maybe even the cries for help that are hidden in some of these tracks. If you want to see last week's episode of 7 on Sunday, then tap right over here. If you want to see a Linkin Park themed video where I talk about Chester, then tap right over here. Everything else, it's in the description. And I do hope that you guys got something out of this episode. Other than that, I'll see you soon for more right here on Beyond ARTV.